You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Just breathe. Take a deep breath. Focus on your breath. And for most people, it works. It's calming and grounding and regulating. However, for some, breathing exercises make things worse, or they can. They can stir up more anxiety or more panic or maybe more distress. For some nervous systems, especially those shaped by trauma, breathwork can trigger the very activation it's meant to calm. And when the one tool everybody is recommending backfires, it's easy to feel discouraged. Welcome to the Wired for Wellbeing podcast. I'm producer Steve Lessard. Each week, I'm joined by my good friend, Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein, as we explore how understanding your nervous system can transform the way you live, love, and relate. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you today?
I'm great, Steve. How about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Doing all right.
Great.
I'm excited today for our caller. We've got a voicemail, a lovely voicemail from Janet, and let's just jump right in and I'll play it and then we'll have a discussion about it.
Sounds great.
My name is Janet, and my question relates to breathing. I understand how lengthening the out-breath can reduce sympathetic nervous system activation. However, any exercises that invite attending to the breath stir up my sympathetic nervous system. Can you help me understand this? And do you have any suggestions?
Okay, Jeffrey, so I want to take a slight step higher here because there's a term there, sympathetic nervous system activation. I just want to make sure all of our friends are all on the same page with that. So maybe you could start by just unpacking what that is, and then we'll get into the questions about the breath.
Sure. So as I've mentioned before, all mammals have three states to source their nervous system responses from. Sympathetic, which is the place of fight or flight. The area we call regulation, which is where we're capable of connection, creativity, compassion, humor, deep love. And then the lowest level of energy, the shutdown and collapse zone. So our caller is referring to trying to engage in something that will help her calm her sympathetic nervous system, but she seems to be encountering difficulties with it.
So is it about always calming down? Because I understand there's sometimes where our energy is too low and sometimes our energy is too high. So it's not always about calming down, is it?
Well, it depends on how you use the breath work. Most of the time, breath is used to help people lower their arousal level. There are certain techniques that can help us, breathing techniques, that can help us raise energy, but they're less often taught. The ones that are primarily taught are ones that encourage us to use the breath as an anchor to come out of strong feelings of fear, panic, anger, irritation, to come out of that sympathetic grasp that we can get caught in.
Gotcha. Okay. So why work with the breath at all? Why does it help us get out of that grasp?
Well, a couple reasons. Number one, the breath is portable. You always are doing it, whether you want to or not. And we have known science has proven what physical sciences of over, thousands of years old, like yoga, has known that the breath can be a tether, an anchoring tool, a way of calming us down and helping us find our way back to being present instead of being all activated and running around our heads like a chicken with its head cut off. So one of the reasons it's taught is because of that. It's obviously everyone breathes if they're alive. And so it's just bringing attention to a process that's already natural. And when we begin to consciously breathe, because we're breathing all the time, but it's our conscious breath, when we are actually shaping the breath and attending to it closely, both of those things, that begins to shift the nervous system arousal level. And it primarily helps it lower from high activation or activation at all back towards a more regulated state. As you had mentioned in the opening, though, if someone has trauma, it can really change this. And over the years that I've taught this, there have been a significant number of folks that have had challenges, difficulties with doing breath work, like our caller offered. Whenever she is invited to attend to her breath, to engage with it in some way, she can find her activation rising. So there can be several reasons for this, right? One of the reasons can be that if someone had trauma and their breath was obstructed, reduced, it can be very anxiety provoking for people who have gone through terrifying situations where their breath has been restricted or stopped. That paying attention to the breath brings them a little bit more back to that traumatic moment, and they have a lot of anxiety flooding the system. And like you were saying before, the very thing that we're taught to engage in to calm down can send some people unintentionally into the stratosphere. So the first thing is that if this is happening to you or anyone, this is not your fault. It's not our caller's fault. She's doing something very wise with her nervous system. She is trying to engage with it and lead it to an improved sense of safety, because our anxiety diminishes, our reactivity diminishes, our ability to be present increases if we're not as driven by defensive activation. Other reasons can be that many people who've had trauma and many people who are highly anxious spend a lot of time outside their bodies. And often, breath work is one of the ways we invite people in. And it becomes unfamiliar, and it also, because it's powerful, can part of what it does when it helps us regulate, right, is it actually also helps us have more access to what we might be feeling or what might be going on that we've been kind of trying to stay above, not really feel. I can keep my busyness going and my mind going, and as long as I'm busy, either mentally or physically or both, I won't start feeling some of these other feelings that I might find pesky, like sadness.
Is that what you mean by like outside your body, that you're in your mind, you're thinking of your to-do list? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. It means much less felt and aware contact with the body, the experience of the body, and much more determined by our thoughts, our feelings, our fears, and the driving narration that goes on in all of our heads.
I can imagine some people might have the experience that their body's actually not a safe place to be. Is that a thing?
Yes, absolutely. I've had many folks who know that coming home to the body is really important. They want to feel better. They want to heal. They want to feel whole. And each time they begin to go in the body, they find they get anxious. And it does, in that moment, feel less safe. Not because the body has become suddenly less safe, but as we're lowering our arousal, we have an increased capacity to attend internally. And it's that rising of awareness that sometimes can scare people who spent a good deal of their lives trying to live a short distance from their body. Sort of safety by being busy, by thinking, and not inhabiting their body, which for many people can feel like the scene of the crime. It can hold the pain, it can hold the sadness, it holds the shame, it holds the judgment. And by the way, all this is going on anyways, and it still is affecting the person. Even if they're staying busy all the time, it still is driving their nervous system and driving a lot of their despair. It's just that they're not aware of it. Instead, they'll be aware of, oh, I have this problem at work, or I got in a traffic jam, or something else. They won't be able to easily look inside at first and notice, oh, I'm upset because of what someone said to me. Oh, it reminded me of being hurt by my parents. Oh, this is another example of where I feel I failed myself or failed someone else. We can start falling in that.
I was wondering if, in Janet's case, is the path to learn how to potentially get in touch with the body? Is it the problem that Janet and others potentially aren't in touch with the body, so that the breath is dangerous, or is the path that there are other tools or techniques at play that would help, in Janet's case, her find the regulation she's looking for?
Yeah. So there's two things I recommend. There are some other techniques that can work for grounding and lowering arousal. One of them is the grounding practice, directing our awareness to, for example, if we're sitting, directing our awareness to points of contact on the surface that's supporting us, and putting more of our awareness in lingering with the sensation of contact. When we do that, when we're just sort of letting ourselves feel into, stay near to the sensation points of contact, we're kind of hovering in a neutral area. We're not as engaged in the storms of the mind. We're a bit more present because we're attending to a present moment sensation. And it helps regulate us, very similar to the breath. There's also, for example, walking meditation, where a walking practice and you're concentrating on the lifting, rolling, and placing of each foot as you walk. This is motion. It's not as easy as just breathing and sitting in a chair. You have to actually move with this. But this kind of movement and paying attention to the feet is usually safer for a lot of people, much less charged than the breath can be. And it still is doing the work of helping your awareness and your attention unhook from its total absorption in your worry, your thought, your anger, and share some of its focus directly with a sensation. What does it feel like when I place my foot? What does it feel like now as I'm sitting in this chair? So those are alternative practices. Another one that people can try is inhaling essential oils, stuff that's really, really pleasant. Can be a soothing smell, a grounding smell, but also it's the molecules that create the scent also go into the olfactory bulb, which is in the center of the brain, and it very directly impacts our level of arousal. So if you pick a scent that has a positive association or just feels very pleasant to you, that can be something else to practice. Something with movement like yoga, where you're concentrating on being aware of your body as you move in to each position, hold each pose, and come out of each pose. Now, a lot of yoga is also done with synchronizing it with the breath, but if that's an issue, people can put that a little bit more on the side at first. And then with the breath itself, there's two close cousins to the breath. One is humming and one is the vu breath. They both, so the long exhale works because as we exhale, the nervous system lowers its arousal. When we inhale, it brings it up. So if we want to capitalize on having someone relax deeply, we want to extend the out breath because each time we extend it, it lowers the nervous system a little bit more. And each time that it's longer than the in breath, it keeps lowering it a little bit. So sometimes people have trouble just focusing on the breath, but you can hum, and even just the humming or a note is doing a similar breath work, but it can be easier for people because they hum, they sing, they do other stuff, and it can feel a little less activating. The other is Peter Levine has something called the VU breath, which is simply taking a big breath in, and as you exhale, you have a V in the beginning. You go, VU. And as you do that, you can feel the vibration in the chest, and that helps bring us back into body contact and lower arousal. Some people find those a tad easier than just doing the breath.
You know, it's interesting. When you did the VU breath, it reminded me immediately of the seed syllable Om and chanting Om, which happens in yoga practices and other places.
Same kind of a thing, right? The long extended out breath when we're chanting Om or any sound or song helps. And the other piece is to try, this is a little bit more challenging, but our caller could experiment with doing the hand on the heart and the hand on the face while she's trying to gently pay attention to the breath. And I would invite her to keep coming back to the sensations of the breath, because her activation will pull her out of the breath and will make her frightened. it'll start paying attention to whatever signs of unsafety, a little bit of activation are going on. Maybe start to ruminate about, will I do this? Or why is this coming on? Or why can't I get through my breath? Or what's wrong with me? And all those things send to increase the activation. If you can stay with the sensations of the breath and resist the urge to go up and talk about it, judge about it, or create a story about how horrible this is going to be or that you're never going to get it, but just coming back to the moment by moment changing sensation of the breath, that's the key. Now, over time, anyone who I've worked with who's had great difficulty with breath, over time has been able to work with the breath fine. It's just they didn't start there because they needed to give their nervous system other routes to begin to trust that you can begin to relax and not lose it. You can begin to regulate and not get more overwhelmed.
I'm chuckling because as a younger man, I did I think it was like a 11 or 14 day Vipassana retreat where you sit for ungodly amounts of time, at least in my opinion at the time, during the day in meditation. And it's all about noticing sensations. And I was there for like 4 or 5 days, just honestly miserable at that point, just feeling like nothing in my body would ever work again from trying to maintain this seated posture. And I remember like sort of being in like the meditation mentor interview, and they're saying like, what's coming up for you? What's coming up for you in your mind? I'm like, nothing's coming up. The only thing I can think about is how much my knees hurt. And they just said, well, it sounds like that's what's coming up for you. but for whatever reason, I wanted something different. I wanted like moments of enlightenment, or I wanted the golden drips they talk about in the sutra. Like who knows, whatever I wanted, right? But like the thing that was there, I just wasn't having it. I didn't want that.
You wanted release.
Yeah.
You were seeking release, which is what people do when they want healing or a spiritual awakening or a more fullness in their life. And this is, by the way, where typical American or Western consciousness comes in. All right, I'm going to sit for 14 hours. My knees are going to explode, but I better get some drops of God out of this, okay? Like I didn't spend $200 and lose all this sleep for nothing. And there is this idea that we effort for something. Now, what I want to take off on that is that when we approach any kind of regulation with that same idea of, okay, I'm going for the prize, this has to go for that, and I have to be successful, we've already weighed down our practice with too much to overcome. But we can learn how to grow into that wider perspective where we can begin to be a little bit softer with our efforts, not so militant, not so strident. Because as we gear up to do our calming exercise, we're actually stoking the nervous system to get even more activated just to do something that's going to relax us. Okay, get down and do your breaths. Give me 5 on the floor, and whatever it is. And this idea of pushing ourselves. And again, what can work in society or culture or in your job field, I'm getting ahead, doesn't necessarily work at all in the same way when you're trying to befriend your nervous system, when you're trying to find a way to turn the alarm bells down so you can actually be here instead of reacting to everything and living 1,000 miles away from your body and living in the next 15 tasks you're going to do and repeating patterns, being driven through this by your nervous system, not by choice. That the way to get out of it is not to force ourselves in the other direction. It's to relax into, which is why when you pay attention to the breath, pay attention, but don't stress yourself about trying to pay attention to it. In other words, it's about feeling it and sensing the breath and its movement, not needing to change it, not needing to create any great insight out of it, just to actually learn how to be with experience as it's occurring. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I want to take this also back to another point because I heard this idea of like finding an anchor, right? Finding an anchor in your body, sensation, a smell, the sensation of the breath, as you mentioned. Do they always have to be in the body? Like, again, I'm just thinking of someone who's like, their body's not a friendly place to them.
So we will be quite limited in how we can regulate our nervous system if we can't enter the body. Because staying outside the body cuts us off from essential information about what's actually happening in our nervous system and how to respond to it. It's as if I live outside my body, someone's trying to have a conversation with me and I keep closing the door on them. Sorry, not now. Sorry, not now. I got things to do. I don't have time for this anxiety or this doubt or this stress. I just need to go through. And so many of us do that we actually can be proud of that. How much I push through. I'm a good guy. I suffered a lot. It's somehow this perverted idea that the harder and the longer we struggle, suffer, or push ourselves in anything, the better a person we are.
Yeah, that's incredibly ingrained, right? Like this hustle, work hard, push hard. In my case, sit for 14 hours straight and don't complain and don't move, and the prize will be there. But you started to talk a little bit about trauma's effects on this and how that can be harder. And I just want to kind of come back to that and particularly maybe look at like our friends who might be experiencing PTSD or complex PTSD. Are there any other things to be aware of as they're trying to explore using the breath in this way to regulate their nervous system?
So the more trauma we have, the more we will use our breath as a doorway to dysregulate, as a doorway to leave.
Explain that to me.
So it's very common when people are recalling traumatic events or they're having an unpleasant memory play in their mind or being reminded of an unpleasant interaction by watching interaction on TV or with someone else, people tend to hold their breath. We hold our breath against pain, often against sadness, often against anger, though we'll let out a breath easier with anger than with anything else. So the exact opposite happens. It becomes automatic to suspend our breath. Matter of fact, something I encourage a lot of folks I work with is to check in with their breath periodically and just see, are you breathing? Because there'll be times when you're distracted in thought and stressing about a day. And if you check in that moment, you're holding your breath. It's not moving while you're finishing that thought, as if I can't think and breathe at the same time or chew gum and walk. I can't do two things. It is when we're dealing with something that we go fight and flight over or trying to push away, the breath becomes restricted and stopped. The way, and that's another reason that moving into breath helps us get unstuck. It allows sensation to move again instead of to be frozen. With PTSD and with CPTSD, there is a significant trauma that causes an ongoing massive dysregulation. But there's a whole lot of trauma, especially with complex PTSD, around trust, relationships, and being alone. So sometimes as we practice coming in, it brings up some pain and it brings up a sensation of loneliness, not necessarily from now, but remembering a kind of ageless loneliness that some of us have felt for so long in our lives. So that can also make moving towards breath challenging because it's getting us in touch with our pain and our feeling that we're different or less than. That there's some shame that can come up here. I mean, there's shame that can come up anywhere, but around the breath and around not doing it or having a difficult time with it, especially with PTSD and CPTSD, there is a tendency to blame ourselves for our difficulties. Everyone else can do the breath, why not me?
What's coming up for me now is something you said early on. And I'm just making up a story about Janet or some other individual. I think we're making an assumption that Janet is using the breath to calm down. But as you talked about earlier, there's this other movement that sometimes we need to make to energize and move up. And you shared, I believe, that like the out breath calms us down, the in breath might activate us. Is there like an inverse breathing exercise if I realize like my problem isn't that I got to calm down. My problem is like I don't have enough energy. Like I can't get off the couch. Like I can't motivate myself.
So there's a yoga technique of breathing called breath of fire, Kapalabhati, and it is longer inhales and very fast and forceful exhales. It's the reverse of the shorter inhale and the long. There's some energy with this because it's a fast exhale, but we're emphasizing the inhale and reducing the length of the exhale. And if done correctly for a few moments, will give people energy. Now, I find that even when I can be in that shutdown, collapse state, I'm actually also often experiencing some anxiety. We can be in more than one state. And I think a lot of us do, which is why some people find that when they feel dorsal, for me too, if I do some breathing or anything to come back in my body, it's a way of inviting me back. Because when we're in that shutdown and collapse that I sometimes refer to as the dorsal vagus zone, but shutdown and collapse, when we're in there, we're very cut off from our body and we're very cut off from thinking. We have very limited connection with ourselves, others, the world. But I can also be anxious that I'm aware that I'm losing time. I don't have time to feel this. I'm feeling this, but there's a part of me that has an agenda and a deadline. And here I am feeling like crap or feeling like I want to sleep for another 5 hours. And yet what's laid out before me is my responsibilities. And most of us do the best we can to answer responsibilities. I mean, that's what, that's part of what gives some people pride, is trying to do their best. Doesn't mean we always are able to do it, but we try. And when we're aware that we can't, even if we don't feel like trying, we can feel bad that we're not.
So what's the antidote there?
Then you first would do a breathing practice to lower arousal, to lower the anxiety. And then you might find yourself just being in that shutdown and collapse state. There's nothing wrong with being there for a little bit. Part of what happens when I wake up and I'm ready to go back to bed, like I've had those days, I can start planning, how long it is going to be, and I got to do all this, and I can run myself down with my story of the day. Or I can come back and realize two things. Being in my body now, I'm aware that I feel tired and I'm not up for this. But I also know that often in an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, I'll feel totally different. It's being able to understand that we'll move in and out of these states, and we're not necessarily going to get trapped in one unless it is our place we normally get a bit stuck, right? Personally, I did shutdown much, much less than I did sympathetic activation. My favorite safety spot was being always active. Inactive felt more dangerous to me. But if you spend a time in activity, fight or flight, everyone will always go down to shutdown and collapse, at least for a period of time, to recover. So if you notice that you're worried or feeling pressure about your state, that too is good to use the breath. And again, going back to our caller, number one, I really appreciate her question. It's a good question, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with and feel horribly alone with. So I want people to know that if breath is troublesome for you, you absolutely can find a few other ways, as I mentioned today, to begin to work with early practices for grounding, for coming back in the body, for lowering arousal. And you can eventually still slowly work on breathing, either by those cousins of breathing, the humming, the vu breath, chanting Om, chanting a prayer, a mantra, anything you want to say, a word, your own name, and humming. Those two are adjacent, not identical. And then also seeing if you do the breath, if you can just do the breath for a minute. Try the long out breath for a minute or for 30 seconds and stop. Then 10 minutes later, a couple hours later, do another 30 seconds and stop. It doesn't have to be a long time. Just dipping little toes in to see how you respond. Over time, the nervous system will seek ease. It will seek safety. And if you keep introducing it to a practice over time with awareness, the fear will diminish. The reactivity will diminish.
I love that advice. Just give it 30 seconds, right? Just give it 10 breaths. Just try it and then see. That feels so much more doable, particularly when like maybe I'm crashing out a little bit or feel like nothing's going to get solved. That feels very much doable. That feels like I can accomplish that.
Right. And again, like we were talking about earlier, the idea is that we don't want to load ourselves up. Okay, got to do the breath. I got to do the hand position. I got to walk. I got to chant. I got to do and all of a sudden it becomes like a second full-time job. And we're working feverishly hard at getting really good at regulation, not realizing we're even going after regulation, how we've gone after life.
Yeah.
Right? Like at 160 miles an hour and like everything in. Or doing it 160 miles an hour and then stopping because we get discouraged because I'm not enlightened yet. I'm not totally regulated. I'm not a happy camper yet. And it's not working. And we stop. The idea is time on a consistent basis is what gives the nervous system the information it needs to shift. And you can make a shift that's, I used to lean much more to sympathetic. I still have a tendency to go there, but I don't live there. I think the first 25 years of my life, I don't think I ever took a vacation from fight or flight. I think that was my life, right? So it can happen. It can happen, but it takes some effort and attention. And this is the other thing. If you've had trauma, one of the hardest things to do is self-care. So the very things that we're talking about can also bring up issues about you got work to do. You shouldn't be breathing. You don't have time for this. You got stuff to worry about, fret about, and not get done. You don't have time to do this breathing practice. And I mean, there's 1,000 reasons why we make self-care and slowing down not appealing to us. It's too long. It's not right now. I'll get to it later. When we're in a sympathetic activation, fight or flight, we do not value slowing down. We value movement. We value running away or fighting. We don't value settling and being here. So like if I'm in flight, and I sit down on the couch at night, I'll start flipping through the channels. I'll start watching different things, not because I'm so interested, but because something in me is looking for a distraction. And sometimes if I have enough energy, I can recognize that and come back into my body. And then I don't have as a compulsive need to be watching something for watching's sake. But sometimes I'm too tired and I just veg because that's where I am at that time. It's partly about learning not to have to be so strict with ourselves, so harsh with ourselves. But yeah, the breath is a great way to start for a lot of us. And it may not be the ideal place for all, but everyone can find their way over time. And if you have the interest, towards better regulation, towards a sense of able to be in the world more as you actually want and are capable of being in the world.
Thank you for that perspective, Jeffrey, and that maybe level setting of what can be possible and what is possible and how we can enter it. We have received so many great questions recently. And I'd love to give you the opportunity to let people know how they can send in their questions. And just before you do that, I do want to thank Janet for sending in her question. I want to acknowledge Janet specifically and share your gratitude for her sending in her question. But Jeffrey, if someone else has a question out there, what can they do?
So if you'd like to send a question, and we'd love to listen or read them, call 866-357-5156. If for some reason you can't reach that number when you're calling internationally, feel free to send an audio file in an email. And if you can't put in the audio file, just type your question and send the email to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. And also, if you're interested, I still have a free gift on my website. And it talks more about our states and some practices for each of the states. So if you'd like to learn more about that and get some practices as well, go to drjeffreyrutstein.com /links. And that'll open up another page, and you'll see a link for a free gift. And go there, and you'll get it sent to you. Steve, as always, it is a pleasure. And I really have a good time when we do these little explorations together.
I agree, Jeffrey. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this with all of us. And I enjoy this opportunity to connect with you and to create this for everybody. So thank you. Appreciate it.
And remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only. If you are struggling with a physical or emotional issue and you're in pain, please seek out a qualified healthcare professional. Thank you all for being with us today. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.